Hi guys, for anyone listening or anyone watching, I'm just gonna make sure that this is up, and then I'll start doing everything. So the basic idea of today is I'm just gonna sit down and try to change these thumbnails into other thumbnails, but just of different types. Like these are meant to capture different personality types, and then I want to try and go away from this basic idea and see if I can at least get two different variations off of each one. Just because I'm trying to search for how I actually want to do these sort of personality types, and also test and push myself to try and just have a clear idea of how I want to draw the specific types. And you can see the different labels up above their heads, which is going to tell you what kind of personality type they have. And I label them the way that I label them. The specific types, and you can see the different labels. So I label them the way that I label them because it's just going to mean like it suggests something about them specifically. This it's kind of labeled a bit weird at the moment, so just like shortcuts. So Vela, or this is meant to be augmenter, not just org. So I'll start off just describing the types. So these are meant to be magical types, but it's based on real psychology. So I've been a counselor for like well over 15 years. So I just break it down into these basic types because it kind of hyper simplifies the different personality types that you'll come across with different people and how they'll sort of interact with the world. So pressurist here is someone that has a very strong opinion on one central idea at a time. So they'll pick one central idea, be very strong-minded about it, very willful, and because they're not busying themselves with tons of information about the world or other people or anything like that, they're just very specific in their focus. They can specialize and become quite strong at whatever they're focusing on, and oftentimes rise in status because of that singular-minded focus. And so in my world, the pressurists are the people that essentially become like generals and leaders and things like that. But they're really strong and create a lot of downwards pressure on people, which often causes them to not act quite right because there's a lot of tension in the air. So with this kind of one, it's all about creating tension and a kind of presence that impacts other people around them. It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong, they're just going to sort of push that one central authority that they have. So they just have one central authority and they'll just push it. A Vela is someone that is quite chaotic. So this is like a biphasic, a bipolar personality disorder or something like that, where not to just pin it to that, but basically by holding two contrasting ideas in their mind at a time, they're often very conflicted in the middle. And this conflict in the middle is central to what like a Vela is, which is when they interact with people, they often put the burden of not understanding a translation or the way that anything works, and because they don't understand things, they put that the pressure of what they don't understand on everyone else. So this might be like a really lovey-dovey, like happy sort of thing, like where they get, love hearts in their eyes and they're like super, super amazed. And so you might think like they're just this awesome, lovely person. But then on the other side, they'll just get like daggers for eyes, because they're just really, really, they start to think about what's the worst case scenario? How can I get over on this person? Or how can I exploit the situation? Or because if I don't, then, I'll never succeed or something like that. So they just turn into a raging, pretty much very nasty kind of reaction, to have, is to be super positive on one end and then just be super nasty on the other end because you've decided that's going to be a successful strategy for yourself. Often these kinds of people, they blow out like friends groups and sort of end up being a bit more nomadic drifters, things like that. But these are kind of like the villains of the story, in a way. They're not pure villains though. They just have a kind of way about them that makes them less likable to most people, I guess. Yeah, not really people persons, just kind of ready to be the villain if they have to, So you might have someone who's focusing on one thing and they can be like a tyrant, but they're probably going to hold true to some sort of integrity or principles. This person is going to be like chaotic, and berserk. When they don't get their way. So it's quite a bit more dangerous. Then we've got Augmenter. So the way that I look at Augmenter is just like they're a normal person, normal, chill, ordinary person, but then they figure out ways to make it better and stronger. So they'll add elements to what they're doing, just to make it a little bit more powerful. So instead of just having one strong idea, they might have a strong idea or opinion that they're basing everything off. But then they'll think about like, how can I vary it one way? Okay, I can vary it this way, and oh, here's another way I can vary it. I can vary it that way. And overall, I'm sort of tending towards this. And so they're trying to brace or strengthen their approach, like their main approach, and they're just giving it extra power, giving it a little bit of context, and it remains very flexible and fast and direct. And that's how I would state their personality, is that they're very direct. So they're not trying to get over on anyone or anything like that. They're just very direct. And so they'll often just bash through things. So this is kind of like your kind of like brawler. Just mentally speaking, they're kind of a bit more like they're capable of creating like technique and enhancing themselves and making themselves like as strong as they need to be to overcome a challenge. And like I don't know, it's cool. It's very warrior-esque. Then we have stabilizers. The way that I see stabilizers is they are how would you describe it? A stabilizer is kind of defensive. They focus on defense. So the world is very complicated. And when you look at the world with open eyes, wide open eyes, you will start to see that at every corner that you look to in life, there is another piece of information that you have to handle. And so what they'll do is they'll try to handle each piece of information that comes to them. They won't try to, They won't base it just off their opinion. They won't base it off just like a couple different things and the transitions between them. They won't just try and add a little bit to what they're doing. They're going to try and go at mostly everything. They're going to say like, oh, I'm going to tackle everything I can with whatever this is. And it's a very defensive way to live your life, which is to think, okay, everybody else is correct. What am I going to do about these million different correct things around me? And it goes away from having like personal opinions, which these first three are, into having a kind of an approach rather than any sort of opinion. And they'll have an approach and start to develop processes to be able to handle these kinds of things. And they will slowly start to construct a way of seeing the world, like a specific sort of structural way that things work, and they'll enhance that and improve that until they have like a world model that suits them and helps them structurally understand how to adapt to situations or react to them and change things. So there's that type. And then you have a pulsar type. So this is a type that very few people understand. I think it's very, very misunderstood. A pulsar type is... So if you see here where there are these two opinions that are very different, and that in between, in the transitions, there's a lot of chaos. A pulsar type basically knows this kind of defensive approach and does it instinctively. They are very defensive by nature. They're kind of like this, but there's something about them that just doesn't like these in-betweens between all these different things. Like, you're preparing for one thing, right? But what about all the in-between cases? What about everything else? So they don't just look at everything flat on in the world around them, but they'll also use another thought process that then attacks at the middle of these points and is like, well, where's that go? What happens if this changes or that changes? So they're very scenario based and contextual. So what they'll do is they may have like specific answers for things, but they know that in certain situations those answers won't work. And so they'll have multiple variations, and this is probably their thing, is they have variations and of plans, and they also adjust and adapt super quick. So this kind of person is so insanely adaptable, it's kind of crazy. So like all these little zappy changes between things are dynamics that, say, someone back here like a Vela cannot handle and pushes on other people as a weapon. This person takes these kinds of challenges internally and very rarely pushes them on others, just deals with it, handles it, and creates a stronger sense of how all those dynamics work together, and is just like, they think so super complex, so hyper specific in each different context, that they start to develop into a territory where their thought processes are extremely faceted. So they'll have an opinion over here, and an opinion over here, and an opinion over here, and an opinion over here. Like, they'll have soft opinions, hard opinions, you name it, they'll have like an opinion on that area. And it's really fascinating how people who think like this, how they sort of behave. Because part of the way that I would describe it is like an archery target, where say, I don't know, say you're a person and you're looking at your opponent and they're going to attack you with a bow and arrow. If an arrow shoots past you on the outside, it's very easy to see. But if an arrow hits you right in the eye, then you're not going to see the arrow because it's just going to be a dot that's just going to come right at you, and then it's just going to hit you in the eye. So the more accurate an approach is, the more invisible it becomes. While on the outside, if it's just like a glancing blow, it's going to be much more visible. Think of it like if someone's like giving a big like haymaker punch, and they're ready to like just, I don't know, they're bringing this over, right? Okay. Like someone's doing a haymaker punch. If it's big and wide and inaccurate, you're definitely going to see it. But if someone's jabbing at you straight, like their hands are just there, and then all of a sudden, bop, this jab comes out like that, and it's super accurate, or it hits you in the eye, you're not going to see it coming, and it's not going to be telegraphed. So the way I see pulses is they'll very rarely telegraph. So you won't be able to get information from them because there's so little to rely on, that you can't sort of get a grasp of them. They're going to be very mysterious. While a stabilizer, while they might not telegraph, you can tell what structures they're working on because they are kind of constant, like societal structures, like well known. So while they're both complex, the stabilizer is often going to be using a well-known concept, while the pulsar is going to be using a concept that is based on chaotic in-betweens that are very specific, contextual, and unknown. This causes a pulsar to often feel isolated. So they often do feel a high degree of isolation because their specialty is so niche and so interesting and so dynamic and so hard. So someone that's thinking like directly or like singularly, they're not going to understand a pulsar because the pulsar is just going to be thinking of things in such a dynamic way that you can't chase it this way. You can't chase it with just a few different things. And say a stabilizer can start to understand this, but they'll say like, why are you going here? This makes no sense. That's kind of difficult. Why would you do that? And well, here you get this lack of telegraphing, and you get like an enhancement of the information that you're developing from an environment. And you start to develop systems that are highly original or unique or specific to yourself. There's pros and cons to each of these styles. The con of a pulsar is that because you're using so many different authorities of thought process, you're going to use up a lot of energy when you do that. So they're going to often be very introverted. And sort of save their energy for when they do it. And when they aren't introverted, they'll be incredibly social. So extremes in bursts. So they're kind of like a cat that isn't going to be a long distance runner, really. They're going to do things in bursts. While a pressurist can maintain pressure over a long period of time and just stay there in a highly competitive state. This person's going to be more tactical, while this person's going to be like in a constant commanding position at all times. And you have Veilers who are going to try and undermine people and put burdens on other people that wouldn't otherwise have burdens. They'll just be like, oh, here you go, take this burden on. Oh, here you go, take this burden on. Here you go, take this burden on. And there'll be chaotic kind of burdens too, and people will start to like hate them for it. Then you've got these augmenters. They're just gonna like go at things hard, direct. They're gonna have tons of blind spots. And seem super vulnerable, but be super strong too. Like whatever they do, they're going to be fairly exceptional at it, or like very quickly, and they're going to have highly intuitive ways of doing things as well. Like they are super, super intuitive. And they find these intuitive, simple solutions quickly. So you might say like laziness is the mother of invention. And they're not lazy, but there is a kind of laziness to them in that they won't think of so many things that they get paralyzed. They won't overthink things. While a stabilizer is obviously going to overthink, and so is a pulsar. They're going to overthink as well and get anxious and stuff. So a lot of pulsars will have kind of like an anxiety thing that they have to deal with constantly, and often stabilizers will too, but not always to the same extent. Because the isolation and stuff with this one kind of makes it a bit more intense. Stabilizers can also be isolated, but they're going to be constant in their output of energy and interaction with the world. They're going to need a lot of alone time too, but they're not going to have like as much of a need to do things in bursts. They'll be constant so long as they're out in public or interacting with people. Augmenter is going to have plenty of energy to spare, so we'll just like use it to do things harder, stronger, more powerfully. Uvela is just really confused about this, and will just obsessive. This is what I'll say. Like they're obsessive. And they often have a kind of superiority complex with like leaders and stuff. So they often try to manipulate events behind the scenes or something like that. Because, they'll see someone that's like a pressurist and see them constantly getting respect from others or whatever. And they'll be like, why don't I get the respect? Why don't I get the thing? I should have everything easy. Why don't it like... And then they'll start to turn like into their darker side and like attack things, and yeah, it can be quite toxic. So these are kind of like super simplified, hyper simplified versions of different personality clusters and traits. And it's one of my theories from when I was doing counseling, is that essentially, when you look at a person and their personality, the amount of weight that is on a person is going to depend on their perspective. So, if a person removes like a cone of vision, so if you have a narrow cone of vision and everything else is black, you're basically going to take up the same area that you can handle. Like you have a certain amount of strength or speed or ability to handle load, like mental cognitive pressure. And say a pressurist is going to have a very narrow viewpoint, while your Vela. Oh, I should actually move this so that it's like in line, right? And so your pressurist is going to have something very narrow. A Vela is probably going to even have narrower perspectives than the pressurist, but multiple. So they're going to have like huge blind spots up the middle and across the sides. Like they're not going to be very aware of things, but they're just going to have like this constant battle between these two sort of slithers of things in their reality. Like whether that be their happy times and their sad times and conflicting with each other constantly or something, while this singular perspective is like, oh, I faced the problem today and then I overcame the problem, and then I face the problem now and now I overcame the problem, where it's constantly in the moment. This is always outside of the moment, bouncing back and forth between the fact that they had failures and they want to guarantee that they never have them again, kind of process happening in their mind. While an augmenter, they're probably going to do something like this, which is they'll just have a shorter range, and they'll just do this kind of thing, their perspective and load and whatever. So they won't look super far. The blind spots is like, yeah, well, it makes sense because it's far away from me. Like, how am I supposed to know something that's far away? Like, I'll just focus on what I can, what's in front of me, and deal with that. And there's different aspects to it, so I'll like pay attention to those, and then I'll figure out like, oh, okay, the main way to go is sort of this way. And so they'll be very direct, very directional, and have a good understanding of things. While your stabilizer, they won't necessarily do it this way. They'll kind of look at the whole, and they'll set themselves up like, okay, well, here and here and here is like the most surface area or spatial positioning I can get. I'm like right in the center here, and I'm just gonna like, I know there's things out there. I'm gonna slowly approach them in like a shield wall and just slowly get to them. And it's them versus a constant pressure from the outside. And so they know that there's this pressure from the outside, and they're constantly like, they're just a kind of a shield against that, like this constant, like whatever this pressure is, they don't want to be ignorant or have a blind spot. They don't want to just kind of not reach that point. They want a bit of everything. And so it's this constant battle between everything being a blind spot and nothing being a blind spot. While your pulsar, they're going to think of things almost in a staccato, abstract way, where they'll sort of have an understanding over here, and then that'll blend with an understanding over here, which will then twist through here and have an understanding with this, and then that will connect back to something that had an understanding over here. And so you'll get this thing where the parts that aren't understand sort of coil around them or with them wherever they go. So the things that they don't understand are often in the moment, momentary, but they will actually go everywhere like smoke. So they will pass over all these different ideas and structures and understandings, but they'll just kind of like miss little things in the moment all the time. And so there'll be like this swirly, swooshy sort of way of approaching pressure. And so This is just about how your mind works, that there is a certain degree of pressure that you can hold in order to basically handle information. And information is pressure because you need to process information, and processing information is going to be extremely tough. Extremely tough. So, that's why you have people that have different mental strategies. It's also just an evolutionary thing, most likely, where you have these different approaches, which are kind of like almost different mathematical approaches for how to handle pressure. Like whether you have one that's dynamic in motion or you have one that's super centralized. So let's say dynamic. Then you have something that's centralized. Something that's like directed, and it's just like gonna focus on that. And then you have split focus, split attention, but that can create like, problems and issues, obviously. And then you have like single-mindedness. And they all have positives and negatives that you want to keep in mind. And people are going to have their own style of interacting with their thoughts. And this is kind of what this is. Now, the faces, the reason I connect these to specific faces is just, it's not so much that you can judge people by their faces or the way that they look. That's not really the case. You really have to judge people by their actions and what they feel and how they think and how they process information, not any specific random judgment. But the thing is that I have a theory that these ways of handling information are also ways of handling their own biology as well. So you'll have biological signals that change based on what your focuses are. Just like evolutionarily speaking, if you're focusing on a single pressure, you're going to have closer eyes. These are going to be more towards the center, which are going to be more predatory kind of like eyes, because you're not going to be looking for your peripheral vision. While further out, everyone's going to be thinking of things much more. This, you only have to focus on something. And if you focus on something, it means that other things atrophy. So for example, the kind of like weaker chin idea, it's actually not that that far from truth, that you get a weaker chin, maybe more atrophy in your body, because you're thinking solely on one specific focus. And that one focus becomes like everything. So for example, if you were to try to be super good at drawing, for example, and you just lock yourself in the room and you get so focused you don't even eat, you're going to like atrophy and wither away. And you're also going to be using up a lot of energy as you're doing that. And so you'll get this kind of like gaunt sort of look, which will start to like push in on your cheeks, you'll sort of lose like your cheeks and stuff, because they're like relaxing a lot, so you're not using those muscles a lot. And so you'll get things like that happen from a single-minded approach, which will sort of push you in a direction of looking a specific way. But there's so many different ways to look if you're a pressurist. And that's actually what I'm getting into today, is I'm going to try and turn these thumbnails, and I'm going to try and push them from like these initial thumbnails into some different looks. So there's not like Like all augmenters don't look like this, all veilers don't look like this, all stabilizers don't look like this, all pulsers don't look like this, all pressurists don't look like this. But there are some themes and ideas. I don't I don't actually understand what the differences are because it's so complex and strange and moving. But I want to stylize an approach to understanding it to help make that more distinct for the book, um, for the manga. Because essentially, like, I wouldn't draw my manga in this style, by the way. I'm just drawing this way because this is naturally how I can sort of break apart different features and whatever. And it's just very easy for me to draw in this style. Um, and my eventual style will have elements of this, but like this looks very sloppy to me, like very wobbly. So like, but that's also part just doing it as a thumbnail, so roughly. But yeah, we have that, and yeah. So, sorry, I'm just turning off these. I'm just turning off my phone notifications. Okay. All right. And so what I'll do is I'll try to create at least two different variations on these to try to study further the ideas of these faces and try to maybe figure out ways we can stylize them more. Because currently, yeah, they're stylized a bit, but not quite enough to make them super distinct, super identifiable, and to represent all the symbolic sort of ways that their thought processes work. And there's always going to be a range in regards to the way that people look, even from a style. So, like, say for example, if we take the pressurist, I'm just putting a base form down here. This isn't like relevant to them at all. Let's actually go like straight down. So whenever you're drawing like faces or something, you just figure out the orientation the face is going to be in, and then you just block in like a basic form for the face, which is often going to be like 45 degrees on the chin or jawline, or it might be steeper, or it might be shallower, and you can just change that as you want and as you need for the character that you have. So you never want to be afraid of like just creating a facial shape. You just put it down so that you have your orientation, and then you can work on it from there, like having a piece of clay, and then you can sculpt it. So something that's quite present in the pressurist here is this aspect of the eyebrow, which is where the eyebrow itself has like a thicker part to the middle before it comes out. This seems to be like a strong stylistic sort of feature, and it atrophies before it gets to the edge of their eyes, so they tend to have shorter eyebrows. I'm not sure if that's always the case in reality, so it's one of those things where I'm definitely not going to be able to figure out exactly what the truth is in how they actually appear always. Like, you're never going to be able to judge people directly from their appearances exactly. That's not really a thing. You'll notice here that I've created two symmetrical of a face. Like, this is almost the exact same length as this, and it's a very soft angle I think when it comes to pressurists, their heads just keep going. Like they don't, their head doesn't sort of like roll back in. They have like very large foreheads. So I think with developing any pressurist, it's about creating a bit of a steeple sort of jawline, or a very weak jawline. So it could just be that it's a flatter jawline, but just very shallow and sort of weaker. So I'm going to try that way. I'm going to actually, I've got two different people that are pressurists in my book. So I've got, whoa, what did I do there? I've got someone called Isabel. So Izzy, and I've got Serena. Now, Serena's more a typical anime look. So I'm not sure how I want to do that. Maybe just bigger eyes. It's hard doing it at such a distance. Okay. I want to keep her relatively cold, so I think I'm gonna make it so that the little specular highlight in the eye is like on the lower corner on the inside to suggest this inward direction. I think I'm gonna do that. And how am I gonna like... I like the idea of having almost circular eyes for them, because it tends to go with the idea of like a singular authority of how they're thinking. So they do have very cat-like eyes and stuff. So, and this sort of Cleopatra look is very very much their style. Before I said this was a brow, and now it seems to be like some nose bridge. That's fine. So I'm thinking with pressurists, I'll just keep the design super simple or super simplified. I do want a little bit of like an innocent look, just a slightly sort of alluring innocence, but kind of like cold. Like they're not gonna pay you back or something. I don't think this is gonna work. Oh, that made it a little bit better. I could add like a little mole or something. That's kind of cute. See, the thing about pressurists is while they won't have cheeks, they may have like large cheekbones. So large rounded cheekbones. So I might like exploit that for cuteness effect. Okay, so right now I'm just looking at this and then I'm trying to think of like what doesn't work here and where is like the line. Like I'm thinking in my head like where do these lines go and how do I want to like sculpt them? And every time I think of that, I'm like, no, that's wrong. That doesn't work. So I just think of lines in my head and then from that position start deciding. So this is already a very wide, broad face. So then I'm thinking, well, how am I going to get this across and sort of down look to create a kind of like a shortened chin structure here without it like being super like broad and stable. And I think, does that work or does it have to be like even narrower? Or maybe we can even just go with a curve. Seems way too stable to me. So how... Oh, that was almost it. There? No, it's too nicely structured. I like this angle here, though. Should I come down more? Like just suddenly sort of sculpt out this way? Maybe. That might look really weird, but I'm just trying to like think of like different structures. Maybe just super shallow. Let's just create bubble lip. Nope. Because the face is way too broad. So does it come down like this? No. Maybe like... That's closer. What is it about that? I think if I make that longer and... That's closer. Yeah, it's closer. I think I'm a little bit off though. It needs to come across a bit earlier. That's a bit too intense. Like huntery. Way too huntery. What if I put in like a little bubble lip? Bubble lip. So the bubble lip is just literally this and this, and you create this, and you'll just create like an archway, and come down like this. It's a super simplified version of a lip, but you know, you can just put in like little things just as like a little cuter lip. So this doesn't really work for me, like with the eyes or whatever. I mean, there's one thing I could do, which is I could create random faces and then just put them under the category I think they belong to, but I think it's better just to push your mind. So that you start to understand why it's not working or why it's not the specific look that you want. Oh, God. How does she look? Maybe I've got to literally got to bring in this top part of the head. Without the forehead, maybe it's never going to sell. And maybe this needs to be quite high. Oh. Interesting. If you keep this quite high, you can just indicate a gauntness to the jawline. Ah. And then maybe a cuter, shallower sort of angle can then work. Okay, cool. That's a little bit more idea. And then I'll keep like the width of the jawbone like a little bit shallower than you would have for other people. And then I'll sort of dent in here and then out. Even if it's just a little bit, because then when you cinch in, that creates that little bit of gauntness that you want, right? Like a little bit, just a hint is maybe enough. And then the eyebrow. Apparently the eyebrow is one of the most communicative parts of the face. But Johannes Vermeer did a very famous painting, Girl in the with the pearl earring, and that was with no eyebrows, purposefully to highlight specific features of her. So it's interesting how some things are apparently super important, but you can even omit super important things. Because most people, they get a read on people from their eyebrows. I think I am going to take it at least to the outside of her eye. At least. This obviously isn't her lip structure. She's going to have thinner lips. But what we can do is we can... this is the top lip, by the way. I want to like create a little softness. If you want to create a soft lip, it's all about this inner curve here. This one. The more that hangs, the softer the lip. Like some people will have super accentuated, like Cupid's bow arches. Other people won't. And some people will have like super accentuated, like bottom lips. Other people won't. I don't think she will. This is a bit too sassy. It's definitely not her. Way too much arch in that top lip. Should never have that much arch. Now I don't like these eyes. That looks worried. I think I'm sitting in a really bad position. Anyways, whatever. Does that work? What am I doing with this second eye? Whatever. Sometimes I'm just doing like pure throwaway stuff. That looks like a lizard alien. Hey, lizard alien. But you know, sometimes people do look like lizard aliens when, like, they're without a wig. I saw Serena, like, kind of having, like, shorter hair. So I'll just do a, like, diamondy bob cut thing for now. I haven't studied hair yet, so don't mind how weird the hair might look. I don't think she would look this way, if I'm being completely honest. I think maybe like a bowl cutty type thing. Like strand. It's a bit. Oh my god, that's so terrible. Whatever. I should probably like actually create like a form that it fits with or something. Oh my god. Maybe like a something. This kind of is pressurous, but at the same time, it's so not the character I want. But I'm okay for now. We'll see what we get up to in a bit. Oh god, it's gonna like come all the way up, isn't it? Like, you've got to like show the. If you don't show the roundedness of the actual head, it's gonna look weird. Okay. And have that come off the head, so it's obviously not the head. And then I do kind of see her having like this short sort of thing, but also sometimes I see her having like long hair as well. So I'm not sure. I know that for my pressurist, I like the idea of having this kind of these ribbons or tails. Like, even if it's just like a cultural thing in their world where they like to have these ribbon like tails of hair. Where does this come from? It's probably coming from like here, right? Oh, this is actually looking like Isabel. Good. Oh, okay. Yeah, if I just simplify this. So ironically, I was trying to create one girl and I created another. Okay. And then I can have this pop out like this. Yeah, that's it. Try to create one girl, create the other. Just wonderful. Yeah. It's mostly the hairstyle that's done that. I kind of see her as having a little bit more regal face. I think that's just completely hindered it, so let's just go back. Maybe I just need to use the transform tool on that one. I'm just wondering with her, like, if I should create some sort of... Not really. I should create like an eyelid. And then here, if I create this little indent here, maybe just that of the cheekbone can maybe make her. I hope. Does it? Almost. It almost does. I'm pushing this a little lower because Isabelle is... While she's a pressurist, she's more of an empathetic pressurist. Like, she's not selfish. That's because of events in her life and stuff. She's still super pressurist. Super scary, but... It's not quite her. Need to make her eyes smaller, I think, maybe. Let's give that a shot. Let's lasso this. My problem is when these start to look like different types. Oh, God. It just doesn't work. It is a pressurist, so... whatever. At my current level of skills, I just have to kind of like accept some things sometimes, so... We'll just accept that's one direction. And move on. At least pushes it in a direction and helps me understand some things, so... That's okay. It's not too easy, let's push more towards Serena. So as I said before, you know, just doesn't matter, just so long as you have a general form to build on, then you can draw anything. And if you've got strokes and stroke confidence, then you can even control angles of your lines and where curves are, so it's nothing to worry about. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go straight for like the hair. Like, how would you create like a... It's like gotta be a flowy hairstyle. But maybe like a shorter bob cut like thing, like much tighter. And like wrapping around the head. That's brutally hard. What the hell? Just carve little bits out of it. I don't know. Is that flowy enough? Something like this would be sort of pressuristy. That's not bad. Okay, let's then just sculpt in a face. It's gonna be something going on. I feel like I'm just failing this session. We'll see. This is way more chibi. But I think she should be more chibi, so... Not this chibi though. She looks so tired. There's something about that that's a little bit Serena. Okay. Maybe... Maybe that's got to be higher. This jawline it's too strong. She needs a weaker jawline. Serena is only like 14 years old, so there's something going on there that I like. Maybe I can still have those little tails in there that have something. I actually want this to be more slender. Okay, there's some things I can get from that, so suppose that's fine for now. Okay, so just looking at them. Oh god, that one on the bottom. Oh, look at that. Head is too high. It's really not either of these characters, but hey, whatever. Just trying to represent a couple different pressurists so I can understand for now. Would have been great if I'd had nailed it, but I didn't nail it, so that just means I'll have to do it again. After I've come back, thought on it. Did nail some things down. But probably not enough. Ugh. I might have to call that it for now. Just think. So there's a Vela called Belle. Also see her as having like a little bit of a bowl cut. So just start there. That looks horrifying. Okay. Oh God. My face is too pushed in. Alright. I'm surprised I actually get any sort of feel on the character designs from like just pushing and trying things. But I suppose that's the only way you can really do it, unless you have like just a godly understanding of everything. I have a feeling she's gonna have very triangular, pronounced eyebrows. Like, yeah, that's like a must for Bell, for sure. It's not quite her, but it kind of is her. Weirdly enough, that almost looks like a pressurist as well, but okay. That's kind of one of my things, is like, I have to figure out how it like shifts so quickly to a different character type. Like, you might think you're on one thing and then all of a sudden it just transitions immediately. Like, now it's kind of looking like a stabilizer. So I'm like, It's because of the ratio of the eyes or something? So strange. It's also the face shape. You can't have the face shape like that. They've got this weird thing, don't they, where their cheeks are like low. And then the jaw juts out. And then the cheeks are low. And so that means the face will come up this way, right? Yeah, that's closer to what she would be like. Okay. And then where would her mouth position be? How do I make that more obnoxious? Eh. Looks way too cute for her. Way too cute. think what I'll do is I'll have like little shards from the outside for Belle. And then, yeah, you'll have like this bowl cut thing. That looks way too cute though. Kind of looks like I see her in my head, but also way too cute. Also, she's almost always got this collar. Big wide collar. Okay. Lisa looks a little bit like her though. Unlike Isabelle, what the hell is that? So Serena. Oh my god, that's so wobbly. I'm gonna have to figure out how to tighten this up so it's less weirdly sloppy. Like, I think that's just way too big of a head for her. Right? Maybe that's what it is. Just a cranial adjustment. Let's go, girl. Let's adjust your cranium size. Cranium's still too big. Let's go into free transform. This tells me that the hair is pretty important for characterization. Okay. Goodbye, eyebrow. It's so far off. Alright, I don't think I have enough energy to do more. Which is really pathetic. But I gotta work later, so. Well, I hope my struggle was enjoyable. Take care, everyone. Alright, bye.